Being a mom is one of the most rewarding experiences that life has to offer, but it can also be one of the most challenging, exhausting, and isolating ones as well, especially when trying to do it sober. I was in a very vulnerable place recently where I was being spiritually attacked from all angles. And in that moment, God revealed a truth to me that ultimately became the inspiration for this episode and bringing back the Faithful Sober Mom podcast. Today, we're breaking the silence and pulling back the curtain on something many experience but few openly talk about: the hidden struggles of motherhood. From postpartum depression to the unending search to find balance, we're having real, raw, and honest conversations about what it means to show up for yourself while raising tiny humans. So reheat that cup of coffee and join me in the trenches for a heartfelt episode that sheds light on some of the silent struggles we face in motherhood. Welcome to the Faithful Sober Mom podcast, the show where we talk about all the highs, the lows, and everything in between when it comes to navigating faith, sobriety, and motherhood. I am your host, Courtney Barron, an entrepreneur and work-from-home mom, here to help you take your power back, let go of who you used to be, and step into a life of purpose and meaning so that you can live a life truly free from alcohol and be the amazing, successful mom that I know you can be. Join me each week for real, raw, and honest conversations where I share with you valuable tools and resources, practical tips, inspiring insights, and so much more that will leave you feeling uplifted and empowered to take on whatever life throws at you. So grab your favorite coffee, tea, or beverage of choice, non-alcoholic of course, and let's dive into this week's episode. Hey mama, I am so excited and grateful to be back here on the Faithful Sober Mom, the show where we talk about all the highs, the lows, and everything in between when it comes to navigating faith, sobriety, and motherhood. My name is Courtney Barron, founder of Revitalizing Hope, and it is my mission to help other sober moms grow in their faith and find their God-driven purpose while thriving in motherhood. You'll have to forgive me. I do have a cold, but I'm not going to let that stop me from getting my message out there because this is motherhood, right? But today's conversation offers a glimpse into where I've been for the last year or so, and we're talking about being deep in the trenches of motherhood and some of the silent battles we face that can be mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually taxing. So next to my sobriety, motherhood has been the most beautiful and rewarding journey that I've ever been on, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. But it also has been one of the most challenging and isolating experiences I've ever had to navigate, even more so than early on in my sobriety, if you can believe that. Shortly after launching this podcast, we found out that we were expecting baby number 2, and if I'm being completely honest here, I was not okay. And that's probably putting it mildly. I had postpartum depression before our son was even born. Did I want to have another baby? Yeah, eventually I did, medically permitting, of course. But I was not ready to have another baby in that particular season. At the time, I was working on finishing my bachelor's degree while also trying to navigate a grueling trial that involved members of my family that I cared for and loved deeply. There's a lot that I could say on that subject matter, but I'm not going to. I'm learning to make peace with everything that's happened over the years, and I'm no longer going to hold space for that in my life. I'm a firm believer in God's plan. It's in His hands now. He knows the truth, and He will be the one to hold them accountable for their actions. But because of everything that was going on at the time, I knew I didn't have the mental or emotional capacity and wasn't physically or even financially prepared to be pregnant again and navigate postpartum while also trying to heal from trauma. So much so that I did play the tape forward, and what I was afraid of happening happened. But what I didn't see was the little support system that I had left essentially turning their backs on me. Instead of uplifting and loving me in an incredibly hard season, people began judging me and distancing themselves from me, which, I mean, there is a small part of me that gets it. There are days more often than I probably would like to admit that I don't want to be around me either. But the thing with motherhood is it truly does take a village. And in today's culture, especially in the digital age, we don't always have that village, that support, that sense of love and belonging, especially when you factor in sobriety and trauma. Many of us are out here trying to break generational curses. And in the process, we've had to distance ourselves from toxic relationships within our families and having a solid support system is vital in both motherhood and sobriety. So when you don't have that, it can be debilitating. So much so to the point where many of us are out here suffering in silence, and we feel as if there is no other option. We have to be okay, especially for our kids. They need us. They need us to be there and to show up for them no matter how hard life gets. And honestly, some days that's the only thing that keeps us going. But deep down, we are far from okay. And sadly, by us always appearing to be okay, that because we don't talk about the hardships or the intrusive thoughts or what we are truly feeling deep down, people don't really know. But at the same time, if they genuinely wanted to know or truly cared, they would ask, right? And that's what makes it so much harder. In today's culture, as mothers, we have this pressure to present this picture perfect life that we're supposed to have it all together and do all the things. We're not allowed to show moments of weakness or emotions. And if we do, we're labeled and judged for it. But here's the truth, God's truth. Now, this came to me at a very vulnerable moment when I was being spiritually attacked from all angles, and everything just kind of boiled over. That no matter what I did, I could not regulate my nervous system, and the tears just kept right on coming. Thankfully, our daughter was at school and our son was taking a nap, which allowed me to feel what I was feeling and put it into words, which ultimately became the inspiration for this episode. So here it is. If someone is not sitting in the trenches with me, genuinely reaching out to ask how I'm doing or offer a helping hand, they don't get to pass judgment on me. Only God gets to do that, except He knows the burdens I carry and the fire I've walked through because He's been there through it all, carrying me when my knees are buckling and I can't even stand on my own. Motherhood is hard enough. We don't need people on the outside looking in and shaming us or making us feel more guilty than we already do for not always being able to put our best foot forward, especially when they don't even know the whole situation. We are tired. We are mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually tired. At this point, we're beyond exhausted. And quite frankly, we're sick of having to defend ourselves and sick of being made to feel less than, as if we're a horrible person or a bad mom, because deep down, we do know otherwise. We know we're a good person with good intentions, with a big heart and a lot of love to give. But they don't see or know the strength that we had, the grace that we gave, or the things that chipped away at our emotional capacity, at our spirit, at our soul. So much so that we don't even know who we are anymore. The little things that hurt us leading up to the moments that we aren't proud of and are already beating ourselves up enough over. We don't need other people piling it on too. We're put in impossible situations where we're expected to attend, but guilted if we don't. It's a catch-22. And regardless of what we do, that most of the time it feels like it doesn't matter. And at the end of the day, we're left feeling more isolated and alone. That no matter what we do, it will never be enough. Or worse, that we will never be enough. When the truth is, what we really need in those hard moments, instead of more judgment, guilt, and shame, is compassion, empathy, and grace. Unfortunately, though, it's it's not that simple. So what exactly can we do about it? As I said before, having a support system is vital in thriving in sobriety and motherhood. And sometimes our circle just cannot give us the support and encouragement or the understanding and empathy that we need, which is why I created a private Facebook group for you, a Christian sober mom who's looking for that community or another layer of support in their lives, a place where they can connect with other moms to share their struggles and triumphs in a judgment and shame-free space. So if what I'm saying is really resonating with you and you haven't done so already, I encourage you to join us. The link is in the description, and we look forward to hearing from you because you are not alone. It may not feel like it right now, but you're not. We are here waiting and ready to support you in this season. But more importantly, now more than ever, you must also lean into your faith, because when you grow closer to God, you will never be alone. This is one I'm sure you've heard before, maybe even know by heart, but in Philippians 4:13, scripture says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And I'll be honest, this is something I'm still currently working on myself, but my faith has meant everything to me and has played a significant role in who I am today and the things I've been able to achieve since choosing my sobriety. However, with season after season of adversity and life just beating me down to the point where I grew distant from God. And it wasn't overnight either, it was gradual. Then one day it hit me like, how did we get here? How did I lose so much faith in myself and God to where my first instinct wasn't to turn to Him, to trust in Him, knowing He has a plan, and to believe in that plan and His promise to meet me in my pain and help me through it, as it says in both Jeremiah 29:11 and Isaiah 41:10. But it's weird. Like, I knew I strayed from Him. I just didn't realize how far. So to change that, I've been working on becoming more intentional with my time and prioritizing my relationship with Him again. What that currently looks like for me is popping in my earbuds during those early morning feedings when the house is quiet and listening to a devotional, and then sitting in the silence, which, if you know me, is not something I do well at all. But I'm working on it because that quiet time is vital for me to receive the message God wants me to hear and apply it to my life. Now, personally, I prefer the hard copy, something tangible that I can hold in my hands and really get into. But with the season I'm in, that's not practical right now, unless I'm gonna be straining my eyes or ending up with red pages. So having that flexibility to still spend time with God and take care of my babies is a win for me and worth the trade-off. The devotional that I'm currently listening to is Seeing Beautiful Again by Lisa Turkhurst. If you're unfamiliar with her work, she is an amazing author who has gone through a multitude of trials and tribulations and has used those experiences to be a servant of God and help others navigate their hard seasons in life. Another way that I'm spending time with God every day, and this is something that I really haven't strayed from. I've been fairly consistent with it over the years, but it's listening to Christian music while doing my day-to-day housework, or whenever I'm driving to and from pickup, running errands, or taking our daughter to practice, you name it. I'm usually listening to Christian music. Ideally, I'd like to get to a point on Sunday evenings after we get the kids down to spend quality time in my Bible and start Bible journaling. With the schedule we're on right now, as we're still reeling from the holidays, we aren't quite there yet, but that's okay. We will get there. Change does take time, especially when it's not just my life that we've been making adjustments to, it's also our kids. Over the last few months, we've been in the process of creating new habits and making intentional shifts in our routines, which has helped immensely for our house to feel less chaotic, less stressful, and less overwhelming by giving everyone more consistency, which is something we all thrive on, especially our littles. And in turn, it makes our lives easier because the days tend to just flow better. But up until recently, and we kind of staggered off track a little bit during the holidays because it's, well, the holidays. My life was very overwhelming and stressful on a daily basis. And I didn't have the emotional capacity to deal with the stressors of life. Like before my day even started, I had anxiety. And if you would have asked me, I wouldn't have been able to tell you why. My body was just in this constant state of fight or flight, and it was easily triggered and nearly impossible for me to regulate my nervous system when it was. And don't get me wrong, I still have my bad days. I haven't figured it all out. But they're fewer and farther in between. And I've noticed a shift in my emotional capacity for those days. They're not nearly as crippling as they once were. And I'm able to process, reset, and bring myself back to baseline, or at least closer to it, a lot easier than I could before. I've noticed that I'm sleeping better and I'm not waking up with anxiety nearly as much. I'm able to actually relax during our downtime. I'm not distracted by the noise of my never-ending to-do list and then feeling guilty for sitting down as if my time could be better spent. And I know I'm not the only mom out there feeling burnt out, overwhelmed, and just completely exhausted, which we'll be diving more into overcoming mom burnout next week. But the last 5 years have literally broken me, mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually broken me, to the point where my thoughts and actions started to become a reflection of who I was when I was drinking. And I hated it. I hated every minute of it. So much so that I started hating myself, which wasn't how I imagined what my life would look like or how motherhood would look like or even who I would look like. And honestly, I didn't even know who I was anymore. Some days I still don't. And I struggled with that. In my heart, I knew I couldn't keep going on like this, and something in my life had to change. Otherwise, it was going to literally destroy me. So, what it truly came down to for me was looking at what was working, what wasn't, but more importantly, what was within my control. There are so many things in life that happen that's beyond our control that, if we're not careful, can cause us to digress in any progress we've made. We may not get to choose what happens in our lives, but we can choose how we respond to it and how we let it affect us. So by looking at my situation, seeing what I could and could not control, one of the things I realized that I needed to work on was prioritizing my relationship, not only with God, but myself, and being more mindful when it comes to identifying and meeting my own needs. Because the truth is, when we take care of ourselves, we are better equipped to not only manage the day to day and take care of our littles, but also to handle the curveballs that life throws at us. Not everything is an emergency, but when our nervous system isn't properly regulated, the small crises become bigger than they need to be, where we end up reacting from an emotional standpoint instead of responding from a thoughtful and intentional one. Instead of getting stuck and repeatedly asking, like, why is this happening to me? Or what did we do to deserve this? Or can we just catch a break already? We can shift our mindset more easily to respond with, okay, this happened. Yeah, it sucks. But what, if anything, can we do about it? Now, obviously, it doesn't quite go like that, but you get the point and see where I'm going with this. By being more in tune with ourselves and being intentional about our thought processes, we can handle the situation more quickly and process and move through it and from it rather than spending more time than necessary dwelling on something that's most likely beyond our control, and we just need to take care of it. And in doing so, we are retraining our brains for those responses to become more natural. Like I said, next week, we're going to dive more into how we can overcome mom burnout, but that is one of the biggest things. And that shift in that mindset was huge for me. But before we wrap up today's episode, I want to take a moment to acknowledge you, the mom listening right now, the one who is in the trenches. I want you to know that I see you. I understand you because I am you. I know the effort that you're putting in every day to make sure that everyone and everything is taken care of, often without recognition or even room to breathe. And most days you probably feel like you can barely keep your head above water. Know that your feelings are valid. You're not crazy. You're not the problem. You are doing the best that you can right now in the season that you're in, and I'm here to help you through it. Motherhood can be so beautiful, but it can also be so lonely, heavy, and filled with struggles that you don't always feel like you can share, especially if you feel like you don't have anyone that you can turn to or trust opening up to. But remember that you are not alone in this. Even in those moments when you feel like the weight is yours to carry, know that God is there with you, waiting for you just to turn to Him and trust in Him. There's also a community of women who can empathize with what you're holding, and we're here ready to listen. There's strength in sharing those silent struggles, even when it's hard or you feel like you're at a loss for words. Sometimes just knowing that you're not alone and that there's another mom out there who can empathize with you is what you need in that moment to help pick yourself back up and find the strength to keep going, because that's what it is for me. I know that there's other mamas out there that need to hear what I have to say and that I can truly make a difference in their lives. God gave me a purpose and a calling many, many years ago, but I let adversity and the things I have no control over affect me and my overall quality of life. So this is me taking my power back and making my dreams a reality, not just for me, but for my family and for you. So if something from today's episode resonated with you, I encourage you to reach out in our community and share your story, your thoughts, or even if you just need to get something off your chest that's weighing heavy on your heart. We'd love to hear from you. Mama, you're doing an amazing job, even when it doesn't feel like it. So please, please stop beating yourself up and be gentle with your heart. It is carrying so much love and so much resilience from everything you've had to overcome, and you will get through this season too. Thank you for joining me for this week's episode of The Faithful Sober Mom. If this podcast has resonated with you or helped you in any way, I would love to hear about it. Please consider leaving a review and sharing on social how this podcast has made an impact on your life. And don't forget to tag @FaithfulSoberMom. Doing so will help others just like you find our community so that they too don't have to feel alone in this season. If you would prefer a more private, closed space, I invite you to join our community of support where you can connect with other like-minded women to share your struggles and triumphs in a judgment and shame-free space. I look forward to connecting with you on social, and until next time, remember that you are worthy, capable, and you are enough.